I started playing in 5th grade in Maine. I was living in a little town in Maine called Dexter, Maine, and literally sort of in the middle of nowhere. And when it came time to choose the instruments, I wanted to play the drums. I've always been really attracted to rhythm. And I'm sure my parents were like, no drums, no drums. So the director asked me if I wanted to play the saxophone, which I had never even thought of. And so I said, sure. And I remember getting the case home. It was an alto sax. I remember getting the case home. It was a blue case with sort of plush blue velvet on the inside of it. And it had the body of the alto and the stopper in the end, and it had the neck and the mouthpiece and the reed and the ligature and the lyre and a swab cloth. And I looked at it, I was like,
love at first sight.
What? No, it was like, oh my God, there's so many pieces in here. So I closed the case. I was like, I'll deal with that later. So I was a little overwhelmed by the multitude of things in the case. But when I started playing it, I took to it pretty quickly and really loved the sound of it. And I was always very attracted to vocal music, especially like old R&B and soul music like Marvin Gaye, Otis Redding, Aretha, Gladys Knight, etc. And so I'd always find that I really gravitated towards that. And I loved to sing, but I don't really have a good voice. So the saxophone became that voice for me.
Grammy winner with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. Tell me about how that came to be.
So they were doing a 5-night run in Nashville at a club called Cafe Milano, and they invited me to come down and sit in on one of the nights. And the other guest who was supposed to show up that night, his daughter got sick, so he wasn't able to make it. And Bela said, well, just play the whole night with us. And I was like, well, I don't know any of your tunes. He said, it was around Christmas time, so he said, well, we'll do some Christmas tunes and some sort of modal tunes, like 1 or 2 chord kind of things. And then I remember I wrote Sunset Road out on a napkin and taped it to my microphone. And we just had a ball. It was just a lot of fun. And so I started playing with them in '97. He asked me to go on the road a couple of weeks later.
How you were discovered by Dave Matthews Band. How did that come to be?
With the Flecktones, we did a lot of opening dates for those guys. Starting, I think, in either '97 or '98, we started doing some opening gigs with them, and they were kind enough to ask us to sit in also. So we started that rapport early, and so through the years, we've gotten to know them, and as a band and as individuals. And in 2008, when LeRoi Moore had a real bad ATV wreck, one of the four-wheelers, I got a call to come in and fill in for him for basically a couple of months until he got better. He was pretty banged up, but he was supposed to ultimately heal, and tragically he didn't. So it was through my relationship with the Flecktones and having gone out with them at different times. That's how we all sort of knew each other.
How are you carrying on his legacy? Because you were officially in the band in 2009.
Nobody can replace Roy. He had a very unique sound. The thing that I really love about his playing is that he was himself. And that's really the goal. It's like, well, how do you hear music? And so the parts that he came up with are brilliant. He sort of got to the music through the saxophone. And that was one of his vehicles, all the different woodwinds, clarinets, flutes. But the melodies he heard in his head, they're just like pieces of a puzzle that just fit right in. And so we always play those parts. One of his visions apparently was to have a horn section. That's why Rashawn was brought in also. So we're continuing that. There are certain things that I play every night that are directly influenced out of the way that he played. Certain sounds I'm making on the instrument also. Certain lines of solos. When I had to memorize the book, there's about 140 tunes in the book. So when I went through the process of memorizing all that, I was listening 3 or 4 hours every day for a solid month, playing along, learning that music. So his influence is, I would say, as great in a lot of ways as most of the other players I've ever listened to.